Good morning. This is Monty once again from DPL Surveillance Equipment. Very nice, pleasant day today. No smoke in the air. Extremely clean and fresh air. We had a slight bit of rain, just 10 minutes worth of rain or something in Camarillo. Just enough to make the air really fresh and crisp. Can't complain at all. My wife outdid herself as far as making the Thanksgiving dinner. It was just me and my wife and my cat. Kind of feel guilty sometimes in terms of not having a whole bunch of drama, setbacks, and stress. I think we talked about the effects of stress and drama continually, especially chronic stress, the type of stress that you encounter when you're working for someone, and that someone is constantly breathing down your gate that you start working on it, because over time, gotta make some noise here, but over time, what happens is that that stress starts to eat away at you, and that's where you get the ulcers, that's where you get the migraines, that's where you get all sorts of ailments that are misdiagnosed and treated, unfortunately, with drugs that give you more side effects so that you can have more issues. And that's a vicious cycle, definitely. So, anyway, we had a very nice Thanksgiving dinner, lots of leftovers. We invited some friends. Unfortunately, these are working people and their lives, even though these are older people, you guys. These are people that are like 55, 60 years old or more. And it's, in my opinion, it's kind of pathetic when your life is so preoccupied with making up for mistakes and making up lost ground that, you know, every holiday, every situation, you find yourself working or some, you know, just preoccupied with stuff rather than taking it easy, relaxing, read a book or something, or just entertaining yourself. But, you know, when you're constantly trying to make ends meet and survive, that's not a very attractive picture when you reach those types of ages. So, you know, listen to people like myself. If you don't listen to people like myself, find someone, read something, study, research, try to figure out what it is that traps people, what are these black holes, if you will, that suck people into these particular situations where you find yourself constantly experiencing setbacks. You know, even if you have to just reevaluate your life or something, trying to figure out what is going on, so that you don't continually spend your entire life making up for lost ground and bad decisions and such. So I guess do a personal inventory, maybe. I don't know. What else is going on? I think a lot of people are in California opening up their homes to the fire victims. Condolences and heartfelt wishes goes out to those people. There was 15,000 meals served. Obama took the liberty of visiting some facilities where they were serving meals to people who couldn't afford to go out and shop and get their own meals or whatever. Donald Trump took the opportunity to lambaste anyone and everyone that was against the migrants coming into California. Federal judges, he took the opportunity to give them a piece of his mind on Twitter, of course. So it's amazing how some people really never take a break from politicizing every little part of their lives and our lives. So you want to step away from that, definitely, as much as possible. There's a time and a place for political debate and discussion. And then there's a time and place where you just reach out, help people, and try to put yourself in someone else's shoes, and just acknowledge or finally realize that, you know, you have something to be thankful for, as compared to interacting with people who just want to make a miserable situation even worse. I guess misery loves company. So what else is going on out there? Anyway, I hope you guys have a great day. Me and my wife are going to go out and run some errands and stuff our faces a little bit more. Not too much because we have a lot of leftovers, like I said. So we're going to come back this afternoon and try to see how much Thanksgiving meal we can make disappear this afternoon, this evening. Then, of course, it's yogurt night. Yogurt night means we have frozen yogurt. At least I do. She may not because she's trying to avoid the sweets and the calories. But we're going to watch a movie and relax. So, other than that, my name is Monty Henry, owner of DPL Surveillance Equipment. We run a full-service surveillance and security equipment company with lifetime guarantees, warranties, and all the products. 24/7, 365 tech sales and customer support. We have the largest inventory of items that not only can you buy, but you can rent and lay away as well. We have an extremely large and growing media library. The categories are the things that we discuss and write about and podcast about. They include, but are not limited to, health and fitness, economics and finance, cybersecurity, surveillance and counter-surveillance, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, you name it, we're covering it. Very interesting article on microbial, or what is it, the biome of the gut. Our guts have a whole microbiome when it in and of itself. Inside your gut, there's a whole environment, if you will, where it's almost like a complete entity, and you want to keep a proper balance between good and bad flora or bacteria in your gut. Definitely want to make sure you stay away from the processed and the packaged foods, and put as much emphasis as possible on things that have hopefully live cultures in it. Non-fat yogurt is a good starting point. Fruits and vegetables definitely make a big difference. And then you'll notice that when you take care of the gut specifically, what happens is the rest of the body tends to follow suit in terms of benefiting also as a result of you taking care of the gut and the bacteria balance in the gut. So that's one thing you want to learn about, read about, study, and understand. We put this article on the website yesterday, and including some videos. Dr. Rhonda Patrick is interviewing Sonnenberg's Erica and Justin Sonnenberg on the microbiome of the gut, and you should take a look at it because I think it's very pertinent, very relevant. A lot of chronic diseases, a lot of inflammatory illnesses are a direct result of an imbalance in the good and bad bacteria that's in the gut. So make sure you read about that. What else is going on? Let's see. Oh yeah, that's just one subject that we posted yesterday. But we do accept Bitcoin, Ethereum. A little bit of car noise in the background. Bitcoin, Bcash, Ethereum, and Litecoin in our shopping cart. We're enhancing the shopping cart all the time, and you can use those cryptocurrencies to make your purchases there. And we're firm believers in that the cryptocurrency space is going to be hopefully offering us more and more of an alternative as far as it being a store of value, a method of payment, and such. Right now, the regular stock markets are taking a hit, and the speculators and the money that's associated with the regular stock market, a lot of that is the same money that's in the cryptocurrency space. And unfortunately, when these investors start running for the exits, they take all of the money from all of these areas. So if they're skittish on on the regular stocks and equities. They're skittish on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and I think that's why we're taking a hit. But at some point, the money stops. The money starts to look for a place to hide and go to and park for a while, and hopefully that'll be the cryptocurrency space. We'll keep promoting it and keep publishing information that makes a reference to why we think the trend is geared more and more towards cryptos and blockchain technology as compared to the regular fiat economy. Let me see. Speaking of such, we want to poke a finger in the eye of the MasterCards and the Visas and American Expresses of the world, and HSBC, Citibanks, all of those guys. And I'm publishing probably 1 or 2 articles a day where some bank gets caught money laundering, facilitating illegal, illicit money transfers in and out of countries that they aren't supposed to deal with, all sorts of illicit activities going on within the banking system. So this is one reason why we need another alternative, because when the banks commit these crimes, they don't even admit guilt. They just settle for some small amount. They get a slap on the wrist, and then they just go back and start committing those crimes all over again. Mainly because when they weigh out the punishment, see, there's always a risk-reward trade-off. So when they look at the risk-reward trade-off, they determine, like any other financial or business decision, what is the reward for breaking these rules and regulations or violating them, as compared to how much money can we make if we do skirt the rules and regulations. And a lot of times it's a business decision. If you're going to make billions of dollars and somebody says, okay, you're going to end up paying like a $10 million fine whenever we catch you, if we do catch you, and then you won't even admit guilt or anything, and then that'll be it. At some point you're going to say, okay, I'd rather take the $1 billion and then I'll pay you $10 million if I get caught. And so that's typically the way that works. This particular article today, I think it's going to go under economics and finance, mainly because we've been talking about the warning signs and the cracks. I think we're in a recession, you guys, myself, but we're going to continue to publish information that lets you know who's preparing for the oncoming downturn, and what are they doing and how serious are they taking it. So when you read this information, just like if there's a hurricane or a tornado or earthquake coming and you got a little bit of a warning, you always want to take advantage of making preparations, just like the banks and the governments are. So anyway, let's take a look at what the governments are proposing as far as preparing for the next downturn. With central banks out of ammunition, governments urged to ready stimulus for next downturn. Again, with central banks out of ammunition, governments urged to ready stimulus for next downturn. OECD warns that countries need to prepare plans for a synchronized spending boost to fight a slowdown, but trade tensions could make that difficult. Governments around the world must prepare spending plans they can roll out quickly and in concert should the global economy slow sharply. Given that central banks have largely run out of ammunition to fight a slowdown, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development said. However, tensions amongst the world's largest economies over trade and other issues could make such fiscal coordination particularly difficult. The OECD still expects the global economy to experience a soft landing over the coming years, but warned Wednesday of a growing risk that high barriers to trade, capital outflows from developing economies, and higher oil prices could push it off track. So, I just want to say that, capital outflows is a major problem. When you start to see, and I keep publishing information that gives you guys examples of capital outflows, they basically mean that the amount of money that are flowing out of a country as compared to flowing into the country. You always want to take a look at that as a barometer. It's like you take a temperature to determine whether or not you're sick or not. Countries, their barometer or thermometer, whatever you want to call it, their gauge is to take a look at how much money is coming in versus how much money is leaving. And there's a lot of countries, believe it or not, where capital outflows are reaching levels that they are definitely concerned. And what happens is a lot of these countries, such as China and Russia and you name it, they start to restrict the amount of money that you can send out of your country. If you think your country's falling apart, then you should have every right to send your money out of the country, right? But your government in those particular countries, even the United States, is going to get into the act of saying, look, no, you can't send your money out of the country. We need that money in this country. And even though you know things are falling apart, things are looking pretty bleak, whatever, so you want to get your money out of the country and into some asset or something somewhere where it's going to be safe. But again, when you have these downturns, the first things the countries typically do is they start to restrict how much money you can send out of your country, because they want that capital within the country so they can use it, versus having you keep it safe under your mattress or something, or just sending it out of the country. So anyway, that's what Bitcoins or cryptos are for, if you want to use it for that purpose. Moving right along, central banks did most of the heavy lifting in steering the global economy out of the sharp slowdown that accompanied the financial crisis, but they are largely out of ammunition. The OECD said policy interest rates are already negative across much of Europe and Japan, meaning banks have to pay central banks to park their money with them, while central banks' balance sheets have been swollen by purchases of government bonds and other securities. So basically they're saying that what they mean by ammunition is the Federal Reserve only has a few tools to stimulate the economy or pull back, cause the economy to slow down a little bit when it's overheating or growing too fast. They either raise rates, which is typically what they do if things are growing too fast and they don't want the economy to overheat, as they say. They raise rates, and then at some point they start pulling back. They start to lower rates again, that's usually their way of stimulating the economy by freeing up capital at cheap prices, at cheap interest rates rather, so that money can flow. But right now, the Federal Reserve is in a bind. They're trying to let rates normalize to a higher level, but they can't really do that too aggressively because the economy really sucks, and they don't want to tip it over too fast. President Trump is putting pressure on Jerome Powell, Fed chairman, to not raise rates too quickly, too aggressively. And at the same time, Jerome Powell knows full well that if the economy tips over into a recession, it's usually easier to lower rates from a higher amount when it's already high. But rates are not high right now, so Jerome Powell knows that that's going to be a problem. You can't really lower rates enough, lower them enough, if you didn't get a chance to raise them. And right now they're trying to raise them to more normal levels, but their president and his administration are not that excited about having high interest rates because they want to get elected, right? So you got a few conflicting factors going on, definitely. Moving right along. With central banks sidelined, it would be down to other parts of governments to provide the stimulus needed to support growth in a future crisis. You can't put too much of a burden on the shoulders of central bankers, said Lawrence Boone, the OECD's chief economist, in an interview. The fiscal authorities should do their job. The OECD advises its member governments, which include the United States, on economic policy, although they don't always listen. Governments increased spending as an immediate response to the 2008 financial crisis, but central bankers quickly took the lead in efforts to turn the global economy around, often working closely together. So again, in 2008, the central bankers had a little bit of leverage. They lowered the interest rates, provided a lot of stimulus to the economy, and that helped a great deal. But and then also, in addition to that, the central bankers pumped a lot of money into the economy. Well, believe it or not, a lot of that money has been pumped into the economy, and central bankers are really trying to sop up or take back some of that money that they pumped into the economy They want to sell some of the assets. So they did quantitative easing to begin with, but now they want to do quantitative tightening. And again, there's a big conflict of interest because when you start selling off all of the assets that you accumulated when you tried to stimulate the economy, now you have a huge surplus of assets that are going to come into the market and quite possibly disturb or disrupt the economy. So again, that could be a problem. Billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of treasuries, bonds, maybe corporate assets, stocks, who you name it. The federal government has been buying everything in order to give us the impression that the economy is being stimulated and that it has a reason to go up, but that was artificial. So now it's time to do quantitative tightening and sell off some of those assets. But everybody on Wall Street is definitely afraid that the additional flood of government assets, whether it's treasuries, bonds, stocks, commodities, whatever it is that the government was accumulating during quantitative easing, is going to be disruptive to the markets. Okay. The OECD advises, we already said that, governments increase spending as an immediate response to the 2008 financial crisis. But central bankers quickly took the lead. Okay, we read that part. One big question mark hanging over the OECD's plan is whether governments that have increasingly been at odds over trade, efforts to tackle climate change and other issues could set their differences aside to coordinate a fiscal stimulus. Look, things could get worse, and in that case, you better prepare to work together. Ms. Boone said, What we're trying to say is be prepared and talk. Be prepared to talk, and the quicker you talk, the better. In new forecasts published Wednesday, the OECD said global economic growth has likely reached a peak of 3.7% this year and is expected to slow in 2019 and 2020 to 3.5%. In September, it forecasts global growth of 3.7% in 2019. The OECD left its growth forecast for the United States unchanged at 2.9% in 2018 and 2.7% in 2.9% in 2018 and 2.7% in 2019, and sees a slowdown to 2.1% in 2020 as the impact of tax cuts and government spending increases fade and the Federal Reserve's rate rises start to bite. The organization lowered its growth forecast for the Eurozone, Japan, and China this year and next, and sees growth slowing in those areas during 2020. However, a number of headwinds could weaken that outlook significantly. The OECD said expanded tariffs on U.S.-China trade, faster outflows of capital from developing economies, and higher oil prices could together reduce global growth to less than 3% by 2020, even approaching 2.5% annualized growth if business investment weakened sharply in response to greater uncertainty. To avert such a slowdown, governments would get greater traction if they acted in sync to boost spending, the OECD said, partly because such a show of common purpose would help restore lost business confidence. The research body said governments should start preparing those spending plans now as to be able to act quickly should they be needed. That's pretty much it. So the bottom line is central bankers have run out of money, and they run out of ammunition, and they've run out of tools basically to stimulate the economy during the next downturn. So the OECD is going around the world just begging the other countries to see if they can come up with some other plans that's going to help stimulate the economy during the downturn. And right now, there's been so much cheap and free money flooding the markets that, at some point, it's just not even effective anymore. You print monopoly money by way of the central bankers, and then things still don't pick up, so now you got a problem. But anyway, the OECD wants to basically use the same approach, find somebody with some money, and make sure that they're going to be ready, willing, and able to pump that money into the economies of the world. when things slow down. So make sure you guys are prepared, because I'm making these podcasts and writing these articles, putting them together so that you guys can clearly see that on the government level and corporate level, they're getting ready. So I'm not quite sure why anyone else would not start making preparations themselves. So when you see these signs and signals, and you read my information or listen to it, or whatever your choice of consuming media is, when you listen to this, get this information, make sure that you're taking precautions, just like the big players are. You got to take precautions. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up this session. As we like to say at the conclusion of every session, keep your eyes and ears open and stay safe out there. And we'll talk to you later. Have a good day. Bye.